Hello everyone and a warm welcome to Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse. We are in an AI era and this AI adoption within enterprises is moving to another phase. The organizations are now shifting from generative AI to adopting agentic systems who can act, decide, and learn, and along with that, interact autonomously. But this shift also expands the attack surface. The attack surfaces have moved from model and data to behavior, access, and trust itself. And today's conversation is all about understanding that what are the risks that are emerging from this shift in AI adoption within the enterprises. And for this, the guest in the studio today is Mr. Amit Datar, who's Vice President Product Management at Netskope. A very warm welcome, Amit.
Thank you, Prateek and CXO Digital Pulse for having me on this podcast.
It's indeed our pleasure. Amit, as I was talking that, we are in an AI era and enterprises, they are just catching up with these emerging technology, the new phases, the new tools which are coming over there. And along with this, it's the cybersecurity aspect also, which is increasing for them, and more specifically about the attack surfaces. So, Amit, apart from generative AI, what are the other AI aspects which are really concerning enterprises and more so specifically from the cybersecurity aspect?
You asked a very good question. And the question pertains to is GenAI security is enough to contain the world that we are in. But in reality, what people tend to forget is that it's not just the GenAI apps, but it is the other security services or the services that are built around the GenAI, which are also need to be secured. And I would like to call your attention to two specific things. There are many, but the two main ones that I would like to focus on is agentic AI and MCP. So specifically talking about agentic AI, what the agent AI does is it replaces human users when it talks to the GenAI apps. And in this, the problem is the GenAI apps, when they talk to agentic AI, it is autonomous. There is no human involved. So what kind of data are these agents using? How are they using it? Who are they talking with? All that needs to be contained and sanitized and secured. Who's looking at that? Nobody is. So we need to make sure of that as well. The second aspect of beyond GenAI is the MCP service. Now the MCP is kind of a protocol, and we'll talk more about that later.
Okay.
But MCP basically is the glue between the AI tools and the capabilities exposed by the SaaS applications, right? So the MCP needs to be secured as well, because that opens up an entirely new attack surface that can be exploited. So that is why I said it's a good question. People tend to forget about that, and we have to make sure that those are also addressed.
Okay. And when you talked about the guardrails, so what specific guardrails should enterprises need to have in place to ensure that as they increase their adoption of AI solutions, they also scale up the guardrails?
Yeah, so we at Netskope, when we looked at this problem and we thought about it in a holistic manner, we already have our real-time policies and security guardrails for all the different SaaS applications and cloud applications. So what we thought about is that to address as a counter mechanism to the GenAI kind of cyber attacks, we came up with a three-pronged strategy. So the three-pronged strategy is, the first one is the discovery. So discovery means we need to create an inventory of all the GenAI tools and apps and data that is being used in a customer's environment. First of all, if you don't know what exactly is in your environment, how will you define the scope and how will you guard against that, right? So the first pillar of the prong or the strategy is discovery and visibility. The second aspect of the security mechanism is securing the data pipeline, because all these GenAI apps and agents and LLM models, they literally thrive on the data that is fed into it. So we have to make sure that the data that we are using is sanitized and does not have any policy violations. Okay. Because as soon as there is policy violations, you have data exfiltration, and then you are putting everything at risk. So that is securing the GenAI data pipeline. And the third aspect or the third strategy pillar is control and protect. That means with the Netskope SSE engine, which is basically the real-time protection policies for all your traffic inline, we get to monitor and inspect all of that traffic between the agents and the SaaS apps, or the tools and the agents, or agent-to-agent kind of traffic, everything. We can apply those real-time granular policies and make sure that there is no data exfiltration happening, or there is no threat infiltration happening. And that is the three-pronged strategy mechanism that Netscope is deploying as the guardrails for this GenAI.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, going back to the term which you mentioned, MCP. So, if you could just elaborate what is MCP and what are the concerns around it for enterprises?
So yeah, so MCP, so let me just begin by saying MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And Model Context Protocol includes an MCP client and an MCP server. So the MCP server are all the AI tools and agents and the LLM models which talk to external tools and apps and data. So entities like Netscope and Salesforce, or for example, Salesforce or any other SaaS app, they are exposing their capabilities in a standardized format for these AI tools to consume or ingest. Now, the AI tools or the agents that are talking to these capabilities are called the MCP clients. And the MCP server that sits in the middle is basically the glue between the AI tools that are outside talking to the capabilities or the SaaS services on the inside. And that is why, that is what the MCP basically stands for. Now, remember this. So, MCP is now the new conduit, and it is extending the attack surface for cyber criminals to attack. And that is why it is paramount to make sure that this new, what you might call a gateway or an entry path into your network is secured. And that is the thing that we need to look at when you talk about MCP and securing the MCP itself.
And as we have talked about all these concerns that are there along with the AI solutions, how can enterprises work on to address the risk which are attached to it?
Like I said before, MCP is the new attack surface that can be exploited by cyber criminals. And for that, we have to make sure that we put the same security guardrails that I talked about earlier in this context as well. So to just to reiterate, the new security, the new guardrails that we have to put around are we have to see the inventory of all the MCP servers and clients that are in the customer's environment. Once we have the visibility and we discover all of these entities, we have to make sure that we are assigning the risk score to these MCP servers or clients. And then, similar to what we do for SaaS applications, if the risk score is low, then you just block access to that. No questions asked. So that way you are reducing the attack surface. The third thing is the way we do the real-time policies for all your real-time traffic, we can extend that same to the MCP traffic as well. So that way, doesn't matter whether it's a human user or an agentic AI that is using the MCP, we still apply the granular policies and maintain the security posture that we have. Another thing that to keep in mind is also log all the MCP events, right? Because in case of if you want to go back and look at forensic analysis, or if you want to do some kind of investigation data to see where things went wrong and who was the culprit, it becomes easier to do that. And last but not the least, we have to make sure that we sanitize the data that is being used and passed through the MCP by these agentic AIs. Because many times what happens is there is a lax in terms of the protection and the sanity of the data. And so if you don't pay attention to that, there is the very easy chance of data exfiltration and some of your proprietary data being exposed out into the wild.
Oh, great. And this is what we have learned from this conversation that, AI systems will exist across enterprises. But when we think about security, it cannot be an afterthought. Security needs to be there in place just to govern these AI agents, understand that how they are seeing, deciding, and acting. So the organizations who will be successful going forward in the future won't be those who are just monitoring them. These would be those organizations who are governing the AI agents, who have an equivalent zero trust aspect as they had on humans, similar to these AI agents also. And this is the really critical aspect as these organizations are adopting these AI agents across their operations and functionality. And I think this crux came out very clearly from this conversation. Thank you so much, Amit, for this insight that you brought that, how this criticality is increasing, what needs to be addressed for enterprises. And this has become really priority for the enterprises, not only in India, but across the globe.
Yes, thank you, Pratik.
Thank you so much, Amit, for your time. And thank you for our lovely audience who have been here with us today. And I hope so this conversation really brought in forward the light that is really critical for enterprises. Do look forward to more such conversation in this space of digital dialogue around technology, security, and all the emerging technologies that are yet to come for enterprises. Till then, take care.